Well, hello, everybody. Good Tuesday afternoon, and welcome to another edition of Brain Buzz with Mike. I am your host, Mike Harrigan, coming to you live from the Braining Center in Leesburg, Virginia. Today, we have what I believe is a very interesting topic. It has to do with stress, and specifically, it has to do with whether or not stress is contagious. And you heard me right, literally contagious, like a cold or a flu or something else that you can spread it or catch it from others, right? And so let's start by saying, have you ever, and I'm sure we all have, been in a situation where we're around somebody and they seem to be very anxious and stressed out, and we start to feel like we're stressed as well, and like we're getting in that same mode. Well, it may not be our imaginations. New science is now showing that, in fact, it might be that we're literally catching stress from other people. So there was a study that we will reference here. It's a new study that came out recently in the Journal of Nature Neuroscience, and it suggests two things. The first is not quite as surprising. The other is quite surprising to me. The first is that that stress causes changes in the brain, specific changes in the hippocampus of the brain, but that it causes structural changes in the brain. The more surprising part is that others that are around that stress, the person that started the stress brain, their brains will start to mirror those changes. They'll start to change in the same way. Basically showing that stress is quite likely contagious. All right, let's dig into it a little bit. But first, I have to give you a little bit of a disclaimer. The study was done on mice, so there's not necessarily a direct correlation to humans, but the authors are very quick to point out that the structures that they were monitoring in the mice, the brain structures that they're monitoring in the mice, are the same structures that are present in humans, and they believe that the outcomes that they've observed in mice are very likely to occur in humans as well. So let's get to the study. So in brief, what they did is they had a number of mice and they paired them up in sets of two with a partner, right? And then they took one mouse from each of the pairs and took them away and actually exposed them to mild amounts of stress, all right? When they found that or thought that those mice were sufficiently stressed out, they brought them back and paired them back up in their sets of two, right? And then they just monitored the changes in the brains of all the mice throughout this entire experiment. Okay, so here's what the results showed. They showed that the stressed out mice, their brains actually changed. The hippocampus of the brains had specific changes. Now, the hippocampus has a number of functions, but it's key in forming memories. It's also a key player in emotional responses that we would have. All right. And so what they found is that these stressed out mice, their hippocampus had specific changes. The more surprising part is that the partners of the stressed out mice, very rapidly after getting exposed back to the stressed out mice, their brains, their hippocampus seemed to change to mirror the structural changes in the stressed out mice. So essentially what happened was the unstressed mice started to resemble the changes that took place in the stressed out mice. So the unstressed started to mirror the stressed, right? So the author of the study, Tony Lee Sterling of the Hotchkiss Brain Institute, had this to say. He said, the neurons that control the brain's response to stress showed changes in the unstressed partners, which were identical to those we measured in the stressed mice. So that's a pretty profound finding, right? Now, what they attribute this to is they believe that there's a pheromone that is released by the stressed mice that triggers that signals a response in the unstressed mice, and that's how this change is taking place and why they're mirroring those changes. They believe it's from a pheromone that gets released and shared between the mice, right? So let's go on here. What's more interesting here, or most interesting to me, is what another one of the study authors had to say. So he says, and I'll read this, stress circuits in mice and humans are very similar. In particular, the cells we investigated in the mice played the exact same role in humans. They control the hormonal response to stress. It's possible that chemical communication is also happening between humans. Although pheromones and chemical signals are not widely studied in humans, there are recent observations suggesting that we transmit emotional information in subtle, perhaps even subconscious ways. So it kind of makes sense to me. I tend to feel that that's not a big leap, that we as humans are animals, and that it's very likely that we do communicate with each other via non-traditional ways, chemicals or hormone releases through the air, pheromones and so forth, right? So what does this all mean for us? Well, basically it means we need to kind of control our stress levels and try to control whether we're sharing or spreading stress or likely to catch it. So the first things that we can do to take away to help ourselves learn, or a good takeaway from this is that if we are stressed, we should take some personal time to kind of regroup and relax before we go and hang out with our loved ones. If we have a long, hard, stressful day at work, we might want to go for a workout or do something to kind of decompress before we go burden ourselves onto our loved ones, right? On the flip side, if we see somebody else is very stressed out and having a tough day and showing that, we might want to give them some space to regroup and decompress before we subject ourselves to that, right? It doesn't do anybody any good to put ourselves in that situation if it's not going to help us, right? So now on a more specific level, ways that we can actually decompress or de-stress ourselves, I'm going to name just a few things that we can do, right? In other discussions, we'll go into more detail about specifics of certain of these techniques, but just to list a few quick, easy techniques, things that we should be doing to help lower our stress levels. And what you'll find is most of these that I'm going to reference, all of them actually, have many, many benefits beyond just reducing our stress. And they're actually things that we've talked about in previous discussions as well. So the first one, eat healthy. A healthy diet is critical for all of our systems of the brain and our body. Mediterranean diet is the one that I think is the best, but there are a number of good diets out there. The most important thing in this case, by the way, is cutting out the refined sugars. They're the ones that kind of send us in these highs and crashes and make us irritable when we do have these crashes, right? Okay. Secondly, exercise, regular exercise. There's a lot of research showing that exercise reduces stress levels. It enhances your feel-good hormones. It lowers your stress neurotransmitters. So regular exercise is another good thing to do to help us to reduce our stress levels. The third, which we talk about all the time, is solid sleep. We need good, healthy sleep every night. You want to get in a healthy pattern where you're going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time. And if you are snoring a lot, we've talked about this before, you're snoring a lot or you're waking up gasping at night, it's quite possible you have apnea. You want to get that checked out and corrected if you do have apnea, because that could be detrimental in many, many ways, but not the least of which is contributing to stress. And then the last thing that you can do, which isn't as obvious and a lot of people don't think about as much, is you might, if you don't already, explore mindful meditation. So a daily practice of, and it could be short, it could be 20 minutes, 30 minutes in the morning or evening or both, of mindful meditation has been shown in mountains and mountains of research to have profound benefits in many, many ways. But one of the most profound benefits of mindful meditation is the enhancement of the positive hormones, the lowering of stress hormones, and then the enhancing of serotonin and other positive hormones. You can Google ways and practices for mindful meditation. You can get a lot of really good information on YouTube or on Google, but suffice to say that it is a practice that is being done by leading CEOs in the world, top level athletes, top level academics. They're all the people who understand and read and research and know about this. They're all getting into the practice of mindful meditation. All right. So there's just a few things that we can do to decompress, to lower our stress levels. The key takeaways here today are that one, the obvious, stress is not good for chronic stress. Some stress is okay, right? But chronic stress is really not good for us. And we'll, in another discussion, talk about many of the other negative impacts that chronic stress has on us. But let's suffice to say, it's bad. And it's actually now we know, or at least we feel strongly, that it's likely that it's contagious, that the negative impact it's having on us can be spread to others that we love, and that's something we don't want to do. So let's find some good, easy ways to go ahead and lower our stress levels and make it a better existence for ourselves and those we care for. All right. Well, I hope that was helpful. As usual, if you have any questions, you can contact me, Mike Harrigan, at the Braining Center at headstrong1.com. Again, you can email us at brainingcenter at headstrong1.com. And if you have any questions on this topic or any others, you can contact us there. Otherwise, until next week, I hope you have an awesome